And we are live on the PHU Dynasty podcast. This is episode 92, and we are here to bring you the second installment of our team review series for 2025. This time it is the Bombers, the Baton Rouge Bombers, an obvious favorite in the community here, specifically with me. Um, just just really, Sean, just is this the first question, is this team gonna make it something happen this year? Is it just gonna be another
It's always the hope, right? And
I mean,
then
I'm sold the hope every year, Sean.
I'm starting to think that you just love this team because you fear litigation in any form.
I mean,
But
I'll tell you this, like, there are definitely trades that have gone down that, I think we've definitely coulda got the league involved in this. It was the vice president of legal services here, Justin Senior, and I just frankly love the players that he takes. That's the issue with this team. It's
Mhm.
always the guys that I like. Usually it has some sort of name recognition value, some sort of player that may have fell in the draft, some cool names, for example.
every
Um,
every time I'm trolling around the league for like a trade offer, I'm like, oh, I like that guy, and it's always Justin's team. I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah, Justin just has guys that I would like to have on my team. Like once we get to the receiver position, you'll see that there's plenty of guys that I would love to have on my team. Running backs, maybe
Mhm.
not so much. That's definitely subsided over the years. But there's always been a few guys that really, in the draft when they come out, they're guys that I'm interested in. And usually they either get scooped up, frankly, either by this team, the Lionheads, or actually even the later rounds, probably even the team that we reviewed last week in the Battle Axes. A lot of those guys ended up on those teams. So it makes it a tough. But even this past couple of years, I think Dustin's also been in that category for me. The
Mhm.
Elk have definitely drafted a lot of guys that I tend to like Elad McConkey, Malik Neighbors, for example. Lots of guys last year. So interesting team, though, here with the Bombers. It was a team I would say that definitely had their chances the last few years with the running back core that they used to have. And lately, it's kind of just taken a dive in terms of the overall room at running back. And everybody knows in this league how important the running backs are. But the team is built very differently now, and it's basically built through the receiving room, which is, it's always been a decent spot for the Bombers, but it's never really been the high end talent, at least with Ezekiel Elliott from back in the day. This team was kind of based around that and having some good quarterbacks as well. So we can dive right into it, Sean. But I think this will be a fun team review. I mean, just looking here at the Keep Trade Cut page that we have for the Bombers, we have the average age of this team is 26. It's not high or low, really, kind of right in the middle of the pack, I would say, in terms of what we've seen in other teams. The rebuilders are usually under 23ish, 24ish, something like that, and the teams that seem to be the most well balanced are kind of in this range. So even I think Tibbs's team is kind of in this range as well.
Makes sense for his tendencies. He's not. He's definitely a team in our league that doesn't typically do a lot of like all-in moves for draft picks or vice versa. So he just kind of keeps a nice, steady line of younger players coming into the roster every year.
Yeah, that's a good point. This team does not usually trade, big heaps of picks away. Has done it before, or has traded away assets for picks as well, such as the CD Lamb trade back in the day. But
Mhm.
for the most part, this team usually has its own first. Obviously, last year did gave away his first for the running back room there that he developed, but just this team usually has his first, especially future firsts. It's very rare to see this team not just have his 4 picks in the draft. So that also makes the team kind of exciting every offseason because that it's going to get better in some capacity because there's always something to look forward to. But trading wise, this is not a team that I would say makes a lot of trades. Um, it's kind of I think the value of it. He likes his guys, and I appreciate that because usually I like the guys too if I'm trying to reach out for a trade. But this is a team that builds from within, so they supplement through trades if they need to. But for the most part, this is a team that just likes to stay put. kind of middle of the pack in almost all the positional strengths here. From a pick standpoint, I think they are still factoring in the 25 first, but he has both of his firsts for next year and the year after. And really, like as we'll see here in a few minutes, the strength of this team is truly in the receivers, I believe. So let's start right at the top with quarterbacks, and we have 3 quarterbacks on this roster, 3 good ones too. Really good running or a quarterback room, I would say just in general. And we'll start right off at the top with Joe Burrow, who I think is, we talked a little bit on the last podcast. He was just on a unbelievable pace, especially in the back half of last year, where if he should have been the MVP in my eyes. He was just outstanding. And not only that, he was outstanding for fantasy,
Right.
which is tough to do when you don't run the ball as a quarterback. And he was just making it happen anyway, Sean.
Yeah. I mean, our league with the touchdown passing score makes it a little more friendly, but I mean, he had to be that good for them to have a chance in games, which it doesn't look like that's going to change currently. So, I mean, wheels up for Burrow. I mean, he's great. There's a tier of 5 guys that I would say are just in a different, like just higher up than everybody else. Like he's definitely in that 5. So having one of those guys is a positional advantage for me. So
yeah, I mean he's just so solid, and when you talk about his the lack of rushing production, he only had 200 yards last year on the ground, which is just fine because he threw for 43 touchdowns and 9 picks, just short of 5,000 yards as well, and played all 17 games after that injury-riddled 2023. So this was kind of his return to form, because before that injury in 2023 and 2022, he was the number 4 quarterback for the year with 36 touchdowns, 12 picks. So he was even better than that. He just gets better every year, basically. So he's a guy that, especially in redraft, you can just draft him comfortably, know basically exactly what you're going to get. And he has these upside, weeks where he can go off for gigantic numbers with the receiving room that he has. And we'll talk about one of those guys in a few minutes here. But this is just one of these players that there's not much to overthink here. You just put Joe Burrow in the lineup, and he's I would say kind of a bit of a throwback quarterback, Sean, at this point in the league, because there's not many of these guys that just hang in the pocket and just pick apart defenses anymore. There's a lot more plays outside the pocket, and there's lots more running options and RPOs, and that's not what this guy does.
I don't know if it's like a psychological thing at this point, but like I would still have Burrow like comfortably behind Mahomes, Allen, and Lamar if I'm ranking generalized like quarterbacking in the NFL. But like when Burrow plays Mahomes, I feel more comfortable taking him to beat the Chiefs than I would the other 2 guys.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
I don't know how I like get that math, but like I don't know what it is. He's just got that like I'm gonna make this play that maybe the Bills and the Ravens aren't making in the playoffs.
There's
And
a lot of Brady.
Yeah.
I feel like he's got that it factor, and I feel like he's got that, I do need to make a play, and I'm going to do it, and I have the confidence to do it. The Joe Cool thing from back when he was at LSU, and he's done it at the highest level in college. So there's no reason to believe that if he can't get a good, which is a whole nother story with the Bengals, can we get a team around him that's good enough to win? They're not winning because of Joe Burrow being bad. They're not. It's just they got all kinds of other issues on defense. Can't even get a defensive end in the damn camp at this point.
Sure can.
But Burrow is one of those set and forget guys for me. To especially with the other 2 quarterbacks on this roster, you don't really have to overthink this one too much. Just kind of throw him out there and be a top quarterback, at least a top 5 quarterback almost every week, it seems like. So next on the list, we got Jordan Love, who was an interesting case in 2024. Got really hyped up following a solid end to the year prior. And I'll be honest, Sean, like he's a guy that I haven't really, pinned down what I even think about him at this point, because there's been moments where you would, watch him and say, wow, this guy's going to be like the next big thing. And then there are other moments where he looks like he, would be the 24th best quarterback in the league, basically. So I'm not exactly sure where I land on him. Where do you?
His best games are right with those top end guys, and I think it's easy to forget that like Green Bay has been the youngest team in the NFL the last 2 years, and that includes the people that he's throwing to, not even counting himself, who's a young player.
Right.
So I think I would venture to guess that like the consistency of those floor games is going to keep coming up without really losing that high end play, that attacking downfield that he kind of does almost better than almost everybody else in the league. Like he really attacks down the field. So I mean I'm high on Jordan Love. Like I would have him probably in my top 10 quarterbacks moving forward in
Interesting.
real life.
In real life, wow. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like he's not a guy that like, especially in real life, that when they get to the playoffs, like I'm not going to worry about him, at maybe as much as some of these other, wild card type teams that sneak in. Like as far as quarterback, like he's not going to be the problem usually of a losing team. I think just for fantasy, it was just like kind of the way he finished last year that wasn't really strong. There wasn't any. He didn't have a 3 touchdown game from weeks 8 to 18. It was just very mediocre quarterback fantasy play. 21 points here, 16 there, 13 there, and it just wasn't really inspiring. Now at the beginning of the year, he was crushing it with Jaden Reed, where going for 33, 22, 37. So it was just a different looking team towards the end of the year where they weren't really basing the offense around the quarterback play. It was more about Josh Jacobs, which is fine. But for fantasy to get to that, kind of top 8-ish range, which I think he's got the talent for it.
Yeah.
There just seems to be maybe a little bit of a disconnect because, I mean, in 2023, he was the 5th best quarterback in the league with 32 touchdowns and added 4 on the ground. So it's like we know he can get there.
The ground stuff is interesting because I think it's there whenever he wants it. And it's always it feels like a big cop out because everybody's always playing hurt, but like he had pretty decent injuries in week 1, week 8, and week 18 last year. Like just perfectly spread out throughout his entire season. That just kind of I can imagine like at some point there's diminishing returns on like what you're playing with. So I would be curious to see. I really do think that the running stuff is going to come back into play just a little bit more this year.
That would be interesting because like it's not like he didn't run the ball before. I mean, he had 50 attempts for 250 yards the year prior. So, and this year he only had 83 yards. So it's like something,
Yeah,
and he also was hurt a couple of games, I think at the beginning of the year.
yeah.
When Malik Willis was in there.
MCL sprain, and then in week 8 a groin pull, and then the last week of the year he sprained his elbow going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean the MCL sprain basically just eliminates running the ball. Like that's kind of it.
Might as well be a high ankle sprain.
So the upside to get back to QB5 is there. And they also added Matt Golden, so it's not like this should be a better receiving room overall. And I still don't like to just write off Wicks and Dobbs personally because I don't think they're bad players. They're more of role players, which is fine. And for Jordan Love to have 2 what I would consider like bona fide starters and Reed and probably Golden once he gets up to speed, to have those other 2 options is a pretty good thing.
And I mean, not to short sell the fact that they have a backfield that you need to account for, and
Tucker Kraft is good.
Tucker Kraft is really good.
Yeah, he played excellent really last year. He was quietly had a great season last year.
I mean, he's way up my rankings this year as a tight end.
Yeah, redraft. I saw he was kind of like in that 12-ish range on sleeper, and I'm like, I just feels too low. He finished as tight end 7, I think, last year.
I think he's my tight end 5 or 6.
And that's not crazy to me at all. Like he's been getting the hype in camp, and
in a standard league where touchdown scoring is important. I just think like the ebbs and flows of like touchdown passes from year to year. Like there's a lot of ground game for the Packers last year. It always just regresses back to the mean or back and forth. So I
Yeah,
would really imagine that like we should be seeing like 30 plus touchdown passes again this year.
I think 30 for Love would be logical. I mean, there's too many good players on this team for him not to just be a distributor and just make it happen, because he doesn't have to do anything crazy. And LaFleur is a great offensive coordinator as well, which
Right.
I think
Yep.
really he's just in a good situation. He's only 26, and he should just be a rock solid player. And I'm thinking just the Green Bay offense will just be better in general this year. One more year together, cohesiveness. I
And
think they should be better.
and once again at 26, he is like the veteran on this offense outside of like
Yeah,
Jenkins at center or wherever the hell he's going to play this year if he plays for them this year.
they don't have any skill player that I can think of. I think Jacobs at 27 might be like one of the only, older players.
Yeah,
So he has been basically the leader in that on that team over the
he's
last.
already 27. He came into the league young too.
He was
Damn.
a 20-year-old rookie, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and I
Yep.
mean, very
Just remember
interesting.
that.
But
I took
anywho,
Valerie over him.
yeah, I'm a big Josh Jacobs supporter at this point, because
Yep.
he's proven me wrong almost every time I've doubted him. So I'm just gonna just roll with him from now on. Kind of in that James Connery role at this point, where it's just like he's one of those just dependable guys that you just know what you're gonna get. Next in the quarterback room, in the third and final quarterback, is Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. Is 27-year-old season. Really just what a ride it's been for his dynasty value, as you can see on this chart. Came into the league with, I wouldn't say he was like out of that QB class from a dynasty perspective when he came out and was in the rookie draft. Like, he just wasn't a guy that I personally was super excited about potentially drafting, because of the kind of, he's
He
not
wasn't a very toolsy guy coming out.
yeah, he's not an immobile guy, but like that wasn't like the basis of his game was like rushing, and he had kind of like the Russell Wilson-y vibe to him. And
Well, he had a
obviously,
major injury in college before he came out too.
of course, that's a
Like
huge deal.
one of the worst injuries that somebody's probably made it through on the other side. And
I mean, the guy's been getting the shit kicked out of him like his entire career, basically. So, I mean, but from a fantasy standpoint, obviously coming out in the same year as Herbert, and I'm blanking on the number one pick that year, but just good quarterback class in general. But he's just one of these guys that, from a fantasy perspective, he can really have. Yeah, I mean, to me, his ceiling in this offense with this
the Lawrence
system,
here.
it might have been. It might have been. That sounds.
Sorry, you got my wheels spinning in a different direction.
I know. I knew Herbert was in that draft. I just forgot the other one. But for Tua, we've seen the ceiling, and when this offense is humming, which they definitely have before, Tua can play. Tua can be a top 10 quarterback in given weeks, just based on just the explosiveness of the offense. And if the passing game is very screen heavy with Achane, catch and run with Tyreek Hill, like, he could get these big explosive plays as a passer, even though he's not throwing the ball downfield, a ton. But that year that with him and Waddle, and Hill, like, he was just bombing shit every play, and people were just running wide open. And like, you could see, and obviously on the chart, you can see the spikes on the weeks that he, those November weeks where he's blown up and his dynasty value, increases to, he got to 6,000 at one point, which is pretty wild on KTC. But now he's down in the 3,000 range. Obviously, the injuries are a problem. And he's just, frankly, just not the dynasty asset that he used to be.
It really feels like a theme for Justin's team over the years of these guys that will like spike real early on. And like, it's hard to like say, oh, I should sell high on this guy when you've got such a like prized asset when it looks like that. And then like the petering out of some of these assets is just such a, just honestly, just a kick in the nuts. Like,
yeah, I mean,
some of these guys.
There's a lot of these guys like that. You're absolutely right.
And we'll get to them because a couple of them are still on the roster. It's just it more so to him than like any other team in the league. Like, it feels noticeable.
But I also feel like Justin and the Bombers in general are one of these teams, like we kind of mentioned earlier, that doesn't trade a ton and usually just rides out his assets until like for example, in Ezekiel Elliott, for like, just he had him, he drafted him, and he's going to retire with the team. He's going to get a banner, somewhere, or his Hall of Fame number retired somewhere in the Bombers stadium. But like, at some point it does, to me, it does make sense to trade just to shake things up. And maybe try to get some assets that are ascending as opposed to descending. And I think he tried that last year a little bit with that that running back trade that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But
Right.
Tua really in general is just one of these guys that from a dynasty perspective, even in a super flex league, like I'm just not like super thrilled to have at this point.
It's a scary asset.
He's a scary asset. It's not that he's expensive anymore because he's not. But the question is, like, most people that have Tua are not going to sell him at this point because you're just not going to get the value anyway. And he's a serviceable backup. Even in a super flex league as a QB2, he's more than adequate, I would imagine.
Yeah,
so.
He's always going to outplay his value, but he's never going to get traded at that value because of the risk. Right. And like specifically just going into this season, I think it's for them specifically, it's been so consistent that like they blow up against bad teams and struggle against quality playoff teams. So like as like a person that you can start, sit, or whatever, and you've got Burrow, so it's maybe not that big of a deal, but like it's easy to know those games are coming because they've been so consistently good against bad teams and vice versa. And it really just comes down to that, and it comes down to like, have they improved this offensive line to the point where he can throw at like 2.5 seconds as opposed to like literally throwing it 2 seconds after the snap, which has been where he's been at the last year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, and my biggest question at this point for Tua is, like, what is the ceiling at this point? Because he is no longer running the ball. They can't let him run the ball at this point. I mean, last 2 seasons he hasn't even had. Last 3 seasons hasn't had over 74 yards rushing in any of those seasons. Whereas the first couple of years of his career, he had 3 touchdowns to add on the ground in each of those seasons. And I don't think this offense is nearly as explosive as it was in 2023 when he threw for 29 touchdowns. So I don't see him throwing for 4,600 yards again. I mean,
that wouldn't surprise me at all. I maybe think that the offensive line was so bad to a point, plus the injury of his last year just kind of set everybody back. I'm not going to argue with you. Like, Tyreek Hill's getting another year older, and he's very much unstable.
I think we can call him volatile at this point.
But like, I wouldn't be surprised if he went out and had 1,500 yards receiving this year. Like, it wouldn't. No, I don't think anybody would be shocked by that because he's
just one of the most talented players ever.
Yeah. Waddle is a very talented player who's struggled with injuries and getting on this and being healthy at the same time as Tua as well. So like those things, plus McDaniel can play. He can call a run game very well. He's a great.
I'm not sitting here saying that McDaniel is at any point an issue. Like, there's no, this offense, like, he should work. Like, this whole offense should work.
Right.
I don't know. I just feel like specifically with McDaniel, like, he's doing the best he can, like, frankly, with this offense. Yeah. I mean,
Justin's got 2 quarterbacks on his team where, like, if they led the league in passing yards, it wouldn't surprise me in Burrow and Tua. Just based off of the situation, how bad their defenses are behind them, just kind of the games that they're going to have to play this year. It wouldn't surprise me.
I'm just worried, like you said, if they do end up playing behind a lot, which that ends up means he's going to pass a lot, but that also means he's going to get rushed a lot. So like, he hasn't finished the season healthy only one time in 2023 when he had that big season. Otherwise, he's missed at least 4 games in every season. So like, I'm just not feeling great. I think he's like, for this team specifically, getting back to the Bombers is just, he's the 3rd quarterback. And this is a more than adequate 3rd quarterback that frankly is still young, still has value and upside to at least maybe get back to kind of where he was in that 4,600 yard passing season. So, overall, I think this is a great quarterback room. I think it's one of the most solid in the league, I would say. Like, there's none of these guys are old, and frankly, they're all about the same age. And none of them are, past their prime. None of them are too young where you have to wait for them to develop. So like, this is kind of just a solid set it and forget it quarterback room, where especially in a 1 QB league where you really you're not going to pull Burrow out probably at all.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I would worry about is like based on like for their ages, they've all kind of had a good amount of injuries so
Yeah,
far.
they've been banged up.
Obviously,
That's true.
but like Burrow and Love have had a decent amount of injuries. Burrow's had a major injury, so you do worry about that. Maybe like, but that's why you've got three. So
Yeah. And to me, if he only had two, and let's say he had Burrow, Love, and maybe a rookie this year, like a Jackson Dart or something like that, I would feel
yeah,
a lot
I would be concerned.
worse. Yeah. And that would be an issue. But where we're at now, really the only thing you're concerned about at this point is another Tua injury of some kind. And then you're just kind of down to two, and maybe your bye weeks are on the same week or something like that. And like that's where something could happen. But
Yeah, and
obviously,
this team would not survive a Burrow long term injury. Like
it
he
would be
would
a tough
he'd
stretch.
be
Yeah.
selling
It
pretty
would
quick.
be, yeah, and like you said, like with Love, like the upside is there to be a top 10 guy, but maybe I don't know if I would.
It's the residual effects of Burrow getting hurt for this roster that would be
Right, there's other guys that we'll get to as well. So let's keep it moving. We'll go to the running back room, which keep trade cut ranked 8th out of 10 in this league. So not
dang,
totally feeling it, but
rude.
not the bottom. So there you got that going for him. And we'll start right up at the top with Kenny Walker, who surprisingly has just kind of just been like, I don't know how he's still 24. It just doesn't add up in my head. Like I feel like he's been in the league for like 6-7 years at this point, but
This is his fourth season, right?
I think this is year 4 because he's about to get. This would be his contract year, which is important, obviously. For I have this theory that contract years are so important for fantasy because like these guys, they want the cash flow. They try a little harder, they train a little harder, they lock in a little bit more, I think. And this is a theme that we'll get with the Armadillos roster because this is a big year for us for contract years. But for running back specifically nowadays, even Najee last year in that contract year didn't really pay off for him in free agency. I mean, he got a decent deal, but he looked better in that contract year. He looked like he was running harder. There was some more energy. And I think we might see the same thing here with Kenny Walker, who, frankly, his really only issue has been just his overall health. And this is a guy that I liked coming out talent-wise. I don't think there's many people in the league that dislike Kenny Walker. I don't know anybody that would be like, oh, I'm not a Kenny Walker guy. Like almost everybody is.
He is like great value Saquon Barkley to me. Very similar,
that's something.
So I said like very boom bust runner, but like the explosives are great. It does make some freaky plays from time to time. He is not close to Saquon.
Sure, no, I know what you meant,
but just as like the style and everything, it definitely is similar. But I do like his situation coming into this year. I think contract year not withholding, like I think he's going to fit this new system very, very well. I mean, just from his previous looks in like a wide zone style running game, he's looked very good in it, and definitely the best out of this current running back room for that style. So
yes,
I would expect he's gonna health withstanding. Like I think he outplays whatever his ADP is this year as far as a redraft kind of guy.
Yeah, to me, he's a guy that like you got him in a contract year. They have Charbonnet behind him, who I do not think is a bad running back. Mm-hmm. I feel like they're just going to run the wheels off of Walker this year. And if the price gets too high in the offseason, maybe they just let him walk and just roll with Charbonnet for the next year, which would be totally adequate for this team. But I think about pre-draft, there was all these questions about like, could he catch, could he play on third downs, and he's proven absolutely that he can do that. Yep. The biggest question that I have for Walker, and this was evident last year and the year before, frankly, is their offensive line in the middle stinks. They've gotten better with some of the draft stuff that they've done this year, but I just get a little concerned because his efficiency has gone down every single year that he's been in the league. He started a year, I think he was at 4.6 yards per carry his rookie year, and then the last 2 seasons he's been much lower. So it's not like he's gashing guys every play. But I also think I did a little bit of tape watching on just how bad this offensive line was last year, and it was really, really bad. in the all 22. Like they
And
literally couldn't block anybody in the
just
middle.
like when you don't have the talent up front to run like a progressive, pure like drop back scheme for a quarterback, it looks so bad.
It looked a lot worse than even the numbers would indicate. Like it was kind of sad, to be honest. Like there were times even where Charbonnet was running the ball that I was watching where if they had to get on the move, or really just get in space and try to lock up a guy in the second level, like they just frankly couldn't do it. And it seemed like Kenny Walker's getting hit at the line almost every play. So a lot of his yards were after contact. And of course they had the injury. He only played 11 games last year. So like obviously they've gotten better up front, and I think a second year with a little more continuity should help the offensive line. So
And
like I don't think it's gonna be as bad as it was last year.
I specifically adding Zabel and then a second year guy who didn't really play much last year, and Christian Haynes, who
I like Christian Haynes,
was
Sean.
specifically a like wide zone scheme guard in college.
Yeah,
I think is going to make. I think he's of anybody on the Seahawks that we're getting to super nerd football territory. I think he's going to make the biggest leap on this team out of anybody on the roster this year.
that'd be
I
crazy.
I
Yeah,
think he's going to be by the end of the year, like after not playing last year. I think he's going to be considered a quality starter.
I would agree, and he's the guy. I think he was like my super sleeper that
We
year for
both
the
liked him
offensive line.
last
Yeah,
year.
it was
Yeah,
a lot very similar to he has like a Tyler Booker look. Like he's this big wide guy, but he's just so good in space, and that's like
yep.
what this team really needs. And frankly, him and Zabel should be excellent at this as well.
Now,
Um,
neither of these tackles have shown that they can stay healthy, and that's terrifying.
of course, yep.
But I think the interior is going to be significantly improved this year because I
Neither is
like
Kenny
their
Walker.
center that started playing last year too in Oluwatimi. So
They should be
I
better.
think
They
he's
should
fine.
be in theory.
Yep.
So I guess really the only question, I guess we can kind of segue this maybe into Charbonnet, even though he's not next on the list for keep trade cut value. But Charbonnet, basically the same age as Kenny Walker. He's 24 as well. I think this is going to be his third year. Came out a little bit older, but he's a guy that I do think is a good back.
Yep.
I don't think he's a great back, but that's fine. Like when he was coming out, I comped him to James Conner because I do think there's a lot of James Conner in his receiving game and third down ability. But he's also a good runner too. So
Mhm.
like I just wonder, like we've been kind of worried about Walker and Charbonnet and what the split will be for years now at this point, almost 3 years at this point. And it's always kind of been the Kenny Walker show until it isn't. And I feel like that's not really going to change.
Yeah, I mean he's too good to be just a pure handcuffed kind of guy, but I don't know if he's good enough to where you feel good as of like him in a flex spot every week.
Right. And
Maybe
and
like a
he
bye week filler with some depth issues, like it's fine, but yeah, it's just not a great place to be when he's somebody you got to rely on week to week.
he kind of reminds me, like at least from a week to week value standpoint, like he's in that same bucket to me as like a Tyler Algier, where like he's going to get the ball at some point, maybe get some random goal line work, but like you don't feel good about putting him in your lineup, but
Yeah,
you'll get something, and then of course if there's a big injury to Bijan or something, like you have something there.
yeah. I mean, the only difference, like Charbonnet can definitely work on passing downs compared to Algier, but like
Very true. Yeah.
yeah, I would say maybe like one more tier above that, but definitely in that zone for sure.
And like Charbonnet, just in general, looking back at some of his game logs, like he had the one huge game against Arizona last year, but outside of that, there's not a ton. Even back in 2023, like when Kenny was hurt, like he hasn't had these giant games. He's only had one game over 100 yards in his entire career at this point, over 2 seasons, and he's had some opportunities. I mean, obviously, like the weeks that Kenny was hurt and he got 75% of the snaps, there just wasn't great efficiency. And of course, this goes back to the offensive line. Probably that's a piece of this, but like there hasn't been like a game that a stretch of games like even like a Jordan Mason had last year when Christian McCaffrey went down. There was like that 5-week stretch where he just couldn't be stopped. We just haven't seen that out of Charbonnet, and I wonder if like we've always talked about him as like a high upside handcuff. Like how high is the upside really? because we haven't seen it over a prolonged period of time against good defenses, and that's where my concern is with him. Like, I still like the player, I just don't know if he's like, even next year if Kenny Walker leaves, like I'm not going to just throw him at the top of the rankings because of his talent at this point. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, I think he suffers from not like he suffers more from not having like a quality line in front of him, I think, than Walker does, because Walker can break the bigger plays. But I mean, it's not like it's gotten much better. I definitely wouldn't put their offensive line like towards the top of the league. It still definitely needs to be worked on, but we'll see. I think it's going to be better this year, so I'd be curious to see what that does for him.
Yeah, I think just in general, like we'll get a good idea this year, especially for, heading into 26, like what this room is actually going to look like. And this is also a team that just absolutely cannot help themselves when it comes to drafting running backs. They do it every year. This year was Damian Martinez again, and like he's literally he's a bubble roster guy at this point because they have so many guys on a year-to-year basis. Like even Kenny McIntosh, like I don't hate Kenny McIntosh. Like I'm totally like he's a fine third down back in this league. Like I think he'd be totally fine. And they've had other guys in the past that just kind of pop in, pop out. That's like why did you even draft this guy? Why did you use a 4th-round pick on this guy? Or I'm trying to think. There was a guy they took in the 5th a couple years ago that I liked, and I was like, dude, like he's just not going to play now because you just drafted him, and he's going to be the 4th running back. Even DJ Dallas, for example, like he was a 4th running back, but he was a good special teamer. They literally just couldn't keep him because they have too many guys in this room. So I think we'll get some clarity for next year based on what happens this season. But Charbonnet at the 4,000 value seems like it's basically not a trade that I'd be like excited to go trade for Charbonnet right now. Like,
I think you'd be excited to trade for him if you had Kenny Walker.
Yeah, like he's just a classic, like you want to have this guy as your handcuff kind of guy. But
Yep.
If I was like, maybe if you believed that Kenny was going to walk or something like that, and you were a team just looking for kind of like a cheap running back value for maybe next year or something, like maybe you go after Charbonnet. But he's going to be 25 and he still hasn't really proven anything, so that's like not a good feeling for most dynasty owners. But it should be an interesting backfield for sure. Let's go to the next in the keep trade cut ranking value, and that's going to be Cam Scatterbo at 4,400. Gets drafted by the Giants here in the 4th round, 3rd pick, so very high. Basically, I almost consider him a day 2 pick at this point with that, like that high of draft capital for a running back in a deep running back class. 5'11", 215, absolute bulldog out there. Really, honestly, like as much as I didn't love the landing spot for him as far as like just like immediate year 1 value, I just love the guy. And I saw that he was wearing number 44, Sean, which just warmed my heart. I mean, what a number for Cam Scatterbo just to get that Ahmad Bradshaw just bone cutter number. I absolutely love it. So that means something to me. And I just like have a gut feeling that he's going to get on the field and he's going to be a guy that's just going to be like, man, I just don't want to take this guy off the field because he just does everything at such a intense capacity. Like he's just like going to be a hard guy to pull off the field, but also I think Tyrone Tracy's good. Like I still think Tyrone Tracy is good. So like to me, and there's still the ghost of Devin Singletary as well. So like I feel like he's not going to
play because Daboll loves Singletary.
That's what like that's his guy. So like I don't think he's just going to go away.
Which makes this backfield just a total mess, and I have no idea.
It doesn't feel good to draft any of these players. I was even doing a couple of mocks and redraft, and I'm just like, I don't know.
This isn't going to be the last backfield in this episode that I say that about.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I think I might know which one the other one is, but this just doesn't feel great right now in terms of just this year's dynasty or value for Cam Scatterbo. Now, I think he would be the kind of likely candidate for goal line work if it came to that between him and Tracy probably. But the thing is, Tracy's game last year was good. Like he was a good player, and I don't think he's just not going to fade away because of a 4th round draft pick. Like I just don't see that. Even though I think Cam Scatterbo is going to be a fan favorite, obviously. There's going to be he's going to be on the field, but it's just not going to be nearly as much as people think. And his redraft value is absurd, I think, right now, Cam Skattebo. So he's just a guy that I think I'm fading for this year just to kind of see how things shake out. And, maybe if he, has a really good stretch of games and starts, eating into that Tracy workload quite a bit, then maybe that changes. But, for Justin's team, we need running backs really bad on this team, and we need guys that are going to play a lot of snaps. I'm just not quite sure it's going to be Skattebo this year. I don't feel good about that.
I think he's going to play, but yeah, I would agree. I think it's all right. What makes it harder is that like Tracy is a great receiving back, but Skattebo is also a great receiving back.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of overlap, which if I'm running a team, I love that because you're really not like showing your hand like in any kind of alignment. But like as a fantasy owner, it's frustrating because you're like, I want to know what are my roles here? Like what are people doing?
Yeah. And I also think
it's harder to decipher.
Yeah, it's harder to decipher. And like I should go back and watch. Actually, that's probably going to be on my list of things to watch. Is like, can Tyrone Tracy pass protect? Because I don't know if he can. I literally don't know.
I don't know.
I think Singletary did a lot of that work last year. So
I would have a hard time believing he can since he was a wide receiver, like not very long.
Right. Ago. And he's a smaller back in general. So, and I know Cam Skattebo is a good pass blocker. So like that's where I could see like, yes,
well,
maybe
yes and no.
I thought he was fine. Like he's more willing.
His misses are impressive when he whiffs.
Oh, it's life-changingly bad. Yeah, because he's just nothing happens. He doesn't get anything. But he's just going so hard. That like also too, I think Skattebo with a good NFL. I mean, I like Brian Daboll and his staff, but like with a good staff and a real NFL level coaching, for pass protection and stuff like that, like he's already got like what it takes to do it. Just in terms of the mentality, like he can get refined. He's a player that will be refined way more than he was in college, where a lot of the college game that I saw, at least of Skattebo, was just he was just making shit happen. Like there wasn't a lot of things that like looked very polished and professional, but shit just worked. And that unfortunately doesn't fly 100% of the time in the NFL. So I think he'll get reined in a little bit, and maybe some of those things kind of iron themselves out. But I really like Skattebo as a prospect. I'm just like for Justin Seaman, what he needs this year to win. I don't think he's going to be a huge piece this year. Like I think he'll have maybe if there's a Tracy injury or like some bye weeks and flex plays, maybe if he gets some goal line touches and things like that, like sure. But if I'm Justin, I'm not counting on Skattebo to be an every week starter as a second round rookie right out of the gate. I just don't see that right now. All right, let's go to our next guy, and this is probably what you were referring to a few minutes ago, was Joe Mixon here and the Houston Texans. No, really? Okay, I think this is another kind of messy backfield. It's getting a little bit crowded now. I mean, last year it was just the Joe Mixon show, but they definitely have infused talent into this backfield, whether it be veteran talent, Nick Chubb, who I will never bet against, and then Woody Marks is I thought it was a really good third down back, which is exactly what he's going to be for this team. So I thought they filled the roles pretty well. And I'm just like kind of wondering a little bit about Joe Mixon. Obviously, he's another year older. He's taken a lot of workload over the years. He definitely got banged up last year. Still finished at RB11, though, despite only playing in 14 of the 18 games or 17 games. And his efficiency still wasn't great. I mean, he was 4.1 yards per carry. The year prior, he was 4.02. So it's not like he's getting it done, through running yards and efficiency. He's getting it done on the ground with touchdowns mostly. Like we had 11 touchdowns last year, and then sprinkled in 300 receiving yards as well. But like he's just not a guy that I don't think he's ascending at this point. If that makes any sense. Like I'm not thinking he's going to go out and drop an RB7 year next year,
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think he's like probably in that RB2 category, high-end RB2, but I don't know. I think he's still going to have the majority of the work in the backfield. I don't. Nick Chubb would get like what, like at most like 10 opportunities a game. I would say.
Yeah, it just depends how he looks, honestly. Like if he's washed, he might not get anything. Like it's just
Yeah.
like it just depends on what he looks like, and then how quickly Marks can get up to speed in terms of the third down work.
I mean, yeah, but we're talking another day three guy that I don't know. I just can't, like, you're going to tell me that he's going to be out there in a receiving role over Joe Mixon. I just
Not
no.
immediately, that's for sure. I mean, Mixon has been rock solid receiving the ball over the last 4 years, so it's not. And who knows if he can pass protect? I really don't know. I haven't watched a lot of Woody Marks this past year, so.
Mhm.
But what I do know is that I think they were missing a receiving, like a true blown, young receiving back last year. Obviously, with Pierce not being that guy, that I think they drafted him for a specific role in mind. And with the new offensive coordinator, things could look a little different as well. So,
Yeah.
like this is kind of like maybe his guy. So who knows what Marks will look like? But like I do think that I'm not saying that Mixon's not going to get the majority of the touches or it's going to be a bigger split or anything. I'm just worried about like even if he gets the majority of the touches, like last year he had 245 carries in 14 games. Like if it's going to be that type of workload again, I'm just like he's not as spring chicken anymore. So I'm not sure if the efficiency will hold up.
Yeah, I think that it just comes down to like what you think this offense is going to be this year. Is it going to be?
Which I have no clue. I really don't
I
know.
mean, I like Nick Haley coming in COC. I think he's. I like that style. Obviously, coming from like the McVay.
Yeah, the whole McVay
tree.
tree is exciting for the
So
most part.
they're probably going to live in like a very bunched up 11 personnel, which is, I mean, it's been successful. I would, if I'm betting if they're going to be disappointing or improved over last year, I would go improved. So, and
Yeah.
I like the weapons. Like the biggest question is the offensive line. Like, can it get to like not the worst offensive line in the league?
I mean, that would explain the yards per carry last year for the most part. That line sucked. So,
Yeah.
and I don't think they really got better. That's the problem. So I'm just not sure.
You really have to hope, like, is it addition by subtraction? Because they have a ton of bodies there now between draft picks and like just some like journeymen that they've brought in.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, like
they've
they'll,
got
they'll function, but I'm just not. I think and this is something that the McVay tree is historically pretty good at. Even bad lines, they find a way to make them work because the ball comes out usually pretty fast on those offenses. So that's something that didn't really happen last year. It was always these long developing, downfield passing plays to usually trying to focus on Nico Collins, and they would get sacked, and Stroud would get murdered last year. So I think they're going to switch it up and play more of a West Coast, dink and dunker kind of game, and they have the personnel to do that. So I think they'd be fine. But let's keep it moving.
Yeah.
Just we're already at 48 minutes here, so we should probably keep it rolling. We haven't got to the receivers yet.
Here we go.
So here we go. We'll go to Travis Etienne, which this may be the backfield you're actually talking about now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I have zero idea what the hell is going to happen in Jacksonville because you got a whole new staff and.
The problem is, Sean, this is another backfield that like I don't hate a lot of these guys. Like I like a lot of the players. Right. Which is tough because honestly, the guy I like the least is probably the guy we're about to talk about here, Travis Etienne. Like he's just not a guy I'm excited about at this point. It's not because he's not talented.
But his skill set reads that he would be good in a Cohen offense to me.
1,000%. Yes.
So
he is a
what do you do with that?
Perfect fit. He's a perfect fit. And I think like this is going to be a case where he's already kind of established himself. Obviously, he's a first round pick. He's had productive seasons in the past. Like he's looked good at times. So like I think he's just a shoe-in, obviously, at this point, just to be the guy to start. But Bigsby has upside, and
he was just straight up good last year.
He looked solid last year for sure. Like I would say he's good last year for sure. So like it's not like he's gonna go away. But if you just kind of like look at the way that what kind of runs did the Bucs prioritize last year, it was a lot of man up, straight up your face running, and it was dependent on the first level having somebody that can make a guy miss because Bucky made a zillion guys miss last year. So I feel like ETN of the two of those guys is the better fit for that. And he can run between the tackles. It's not like he can't do it. He's got the size, he's got the speed, and he's got the agility. So it's the question is, for me, is I don't think Travis Etienne has good vision. I don't think he's ever had good vision. I think he's just been an athlete that just kind of makes shit happen. Another guy that was similar to this back in the day, like I don't want it was totally different speeds or whatever, but just like a CJ Spiller type, where it was just a guy that like everybody knew he was athletic and really, just a talented athlete, but he wasn't a good running back. And I kind of feel like that's where we're at with ETN. That being said, like there's enough here to believe that even at the very least, that this guy is going to get involved in some sort of screen passing game, some sort of jet sweeps and RPOs and all kinds of different stuff that the Bucs were doing last year. I don't think ETN's just dead. Like even if he loses, the early down work, like he's going to be involved in some way. And this is also a guy that frankly has some trade value at this point. Maybe they could show him off early in the season and think that, maybe we got a couple other guys that we could just kind of roll with and maybe trade him or something later on. That's always a possibility. So that doesn't happen often, but this seems like a guy that could be in that category.
Yeah, you could tell me 3 different guys are going to be the leader in fantasy points on this team, and I would believe you. I think that's
they have a deep room. Like they have a really deep running back room, and frankly,
apologies to LeQuint Allen.
I know it's sad for LeQuint because he's not going to be anything more than the 4. But like even as the 4, like I think LeQuint Allen is the best receiving back on the team right now, which is crazy. But like
it's not Tank.
No, it's not Tank. So that's why like I think even like LeQuint, like I think he's going to touch the ball. Like I don't think he's just going to not be anything. Like even as a 7th round pick, like he's going to be involved in some way in this offense.
I can't wait for the training camp reports of him getting split out as a slot receiver in this offense,
which would be awesome. Like I think it'd be great because I think he could do that too. I think even Liam Cohen said the other day that was a possibility. And I even like their 5th back, Jaquindon Jackson. Like if he was on another team, I'd be like, okay, I could believe in Jaquindon as like a power back as well. So there's all kinds of guys.
We're talking about Jaquindon. It's time to move on.
Hey, 5th running back on the Jags. That's a big spot. That's a big spot. But yeah, ETN in general, like his value is, shot compared to where it was. Very evident by looking at the chart there. But, for Justin, obviously the trade really didn't work out from an ETN standpoint. You're just kind of hoping you could recoup some value here, that he could be, a serviceable starter, at least early in the year, to just kind of get you by with him and Mixon, while you're waiting on a Scadaboo and some of these other guys for this team. So like I said, I'm not feeling great about this, but there's even a chance that he could sign somewhere in the offseason and maybe recoup some of his value if he can get a good landing spot or something. But I'm not feeling great about that. Okay, so we talked about Charbonnet, we talked about Marks. Let's get to Kendre Miller.
He can't stay healthy and get on the field. That's pretty much been his career so far.
He really can't. And I believe the Saints may have signed another running back recently. Is that true?
They've got Devin Neal, Kamara, Clyde, I think, is on this team still.
Clyde's on this team. They just signed somebody else, though, I thought.
Wow.
This is going to be a quick Google. I know we're short on time already, but I think this is worth talking about. So, New Orleans Saints, our lads.
While you're doing that, I will say, like, having fresh faces there that aren't Dennis Allen is probably only a positive for him. That actually probably gives him more of an opportunity. It's just remains to be seen whether he's going to take advantage of it. I tend to not think that, but we will see. Especially
it was the ghost of Cam Akers.
Oh.
Yeah, he's back.
Oh.
This is an interesting...
What a room.
This room is insane, Sean. Listen to this shit. Like, even the backups is wild.
The draft capital is nasty.
Yeah, big draft capital, for sure. So you got Alvin Kamara, Devin Neal, Cam Akers, Kendre Miller, Marcus Yarns, big fan.
Marcus Yarns.
Big fan of Marcus Yarns. Velus Jones is a running back in this room.
Yeah.
And Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And my favorite 25-year-old rookie running back, arguably of all time, Xavier Valade. It's just like a super deep cut from Arizona.
It's a lot of Scrabble points.
X's, Z's, whatever you got. Good stuff for sure. So anyway, this running back room is a bit crowded at this point. I drafted Kendre Miller he had juice in college. I don't know if he's got, like, obviously he can't stay healthy. He was in the doghouse. I don't know if it's going to happen. My bet right now would be no. I don't think it's going to happen. But
there is 100 to 150 carries up for grabs outside of Kamara,
yes,
no doubt in my mind. So it will be interesting to see who gets that, because Kamara is locked in at around, I don't know, like 200 attempts at most.
Right.
So
my problem with Kendre is Devin Neal, because Devin Neal does everything that Kendre Miller doesn't do. So Kendre Miller can't stay healthy. Devin Neal, all he's done is stay healthy.
And he does everything on the field. He's good. He's not
he's
great
solid at everything.
Really anything, but he's good.
Like he is a good back that like you don't need to project anything with him. Whereas we're still projecting with Kendre Miller and we're in year 3. So I just don't feel great, but like there's still, like, he's still 23. He was a young draft pick. So like maybe there's a shot that he gets that, chance that he was asking for. I know in week whatever was 17 was last year, he played against the Falcons and had a good week. So like it's not like he's not dead, but he's on life support. We'll put it that way. And then getting down to the bottom of the roster, obviously Kenny McIntosh. We were talking about him for a minute. Dylan Lobby is a cut for me.
Yeah.
And Zeke is not on a team. So, but we could mention that, hey, it was a good run for Zeke. We don't want to just glance by him, because he was kind of the face of this running back room for the Bombers for years.
He can't find a home. He's somewhere. He's in some Salvation Army bucket somewhere.
I mean, I don't think he just didn't look like he had anything last year. I doubt he's going to even play this year. So it would require lots of injuries. All right, let's go to receivers. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of this team, Sean, for me. We definitely talked about Burrow. This is one of the best stacks in the league. Between Burrow and Chase, if not the best.
I'm just gonna say it feels pretty comfortably number 1 to me.
I can't really think anything that would make me think twice about that at this point. Like Chase is so good, Sean. It's just like,
he's got to be the wide receiver 1 in a dynasty startup, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just look at that chart. That's absurd. That's absurd.
It's him and Jefferson. They're just tier 1 in fantasy and real life. They are so good. Crazy that they're on the same team. Honestly, insane.
Yeah. That LSU roster, and the Neighbors was on that roster, which is just absurd. I think he was a freshman that year.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy business.
Jack Besh was on that roster.
I think Brian Thomas might have been on that roster, which is just so sick. Just absolutely out. Kayshon Boutte was on that roster. And we love Kayshon Boutte. So it's just, this guy, the only concern, which isn't even really a concern, is like maybe he's a checks in the bank guy. I don't know, because he just got paid. But he just doesn't seem like that. And I don't think Joe Burrow will let him do that. So I don't think Joe's going to play that bullshit. So
although if anybody was going to do it, I would respect it. I would respect somebody doing it to the Bengals. Because
if anybody would do it, it would be like for an ownership group. Like it would be sick if it was.
They deserve it. Let's be real.
They've been terrible lately. Like this whole Shamar thing is wild.
He's so great, but there's really not that much to talk about Chase. Like he's the best receiver in fantasy football.
I think he's the best receiver in fantasy. I think he's neck and neck with Jefferson for like the actual NFL, like who's the best receiver. They both kind of do similar things in terms of route running and all that, but
his floor is 1,510 touchdowns to me. Like that's his floor if he plays every game,
which is insanity. He's never, look at these, like his positional rank week to week is literally just wide receiver 1, 2, or 3. Like he's just, exactly what you're going to get, and his boom weeks are insane. So
I remember.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody remembers how sick he was, and he's just frankly, he's just like an untradeable asset at this point. Like unless somebody is willing to throw you 6 first-round picks or something. I don't know how you do it, but all right, next guy is a lot more has a lot more we could talk about for sure. Is Marvin Harrison Jr. Coming off his rookie season. Not really a great rookie season, but not to me. Like I thought the media view of him was kind of messed up because he was still a rookie.
Yeah, he got too hyped.
He was getting drafted in the second round of redraft leagues, which was always stupid.
Nuts.
Everybody knew that was stupid, and they still did it. He's a guy that just, frankly, like receivers don't always just hit immediately. Like it's just not like you're not going to get a 1,200-yard receiver, a rookie every year. It's just not. That's just not how it used to be, and that's really not how it is now. You get lucky every here and there with these big rookie numbers, but the receiving position in the NFL is not easy to learn because there's so much difference in college, specifically where you, frankly, like in college, you're going against 2-star and 3-star corners. If you're playing Marshall and Bowling Green or whatever, and then you come into the NFL and everybody's a 5-star, and you don't really have to. You have to be more polished. And frankly, like Harrison did a lot of his work in college, just kind of going up over guys, making plays. He did get open, but he was never this explosive athlete, and that was not really his game. He was just a very solid overall player, kind of frankly like a DeAndre Hopkins type, where it was just like
really, really good at creating space in the middle of the field, which
yes,
that's his specialty as a receiver. The only problem with that is that he is a quarterback that can't see over the line.
I think it's his biggest issue right now is Kyler. I really do.
I 100% agree. I think I texted you this, like, it feels like a few weeks ago, I think now, that this is from Reception Perception, but like his most successful run route as far as separation and winning is the dig.
Yeah.
Kyler threw a career high percent of attempts at the dig last year at 3%.
That's disgusting.
3.
Like you can't throw an in route, and I think that's literally like that doesn't work in the NFL. Like you have to be able to throw over the middle.
This guy that, okay, the thing that you do the best, we can't do. What else is going to happen? Like,
and I hate to say it, Sean, but every receiver they have, that's all they do is run in routes. Michael Wilson's the same thing. Trey McBride is kind of the same thing. Like they're just working over the middle, and they just don't have a guy that can throw it to them. Like
they just as like a stylistic match, they should have just taken a Dunze.
Yeah, just get some boundary guy just to run straight. That's all. That's really all you need. Just put Pickens on that team. Like that's what they needed.
I don't think he's any worse of a receiver to me than when he came into the NFL. I think he's just in a terrible spot.
And because of the fact that like the timing wasn't perfect last year, like you could absolutely tell that they like weren't 100% on the same page at times. Like 1 year more in the system should help. Obviously, first year as a rookie receiver is never easy to begin with. So,
and I would say, like, as far as him personally, like what he needed to get better at was just physicality. The dude's fucking jacked.
No, I mean, did you see how much weight he gained this offseason?
Yeah,
he looks huge. Like he looks Megatron-y now.
I think he's just on more of a professional diet now as opposed to college.
I think somebody got in his ear, coaching staff or whoever it was like, listen, hey, let's just, yeah, I mean, even that, like, hey, let's just, you got the frame. Let's just max this thing out and see what happens.
Yep.
I'm not worried about him. Like, I still feel fine. I feel similarly to Odunze too, honestly, kind of the same vibes where it's like, we know that they're good and talented. It's just a matter of like, let's get the rest of the thing figured out on offense. And then we can actually see what we got here. I'm just more, like I said, I'm most worried about Kyler because I don't know how much he's going to improve. He's almost 28 years old at this point.
I think this is his last year in Arizona.
I think so too. And like, if they end up going, 6 and 11 or whatever it is, like, I think they could be moving on and looking in another direction for sure. And like, I just don't know, especially when you have a team that's kind of like, they're supposedly rebuilding, but then they also have assets that aren't like good rebuilding assets, like a James Conner, and maybe like even a Kyler, frankly, is not like a guy that you is in your long-term plans. They're just like kind of a weird spot, the Cardinals. Like they should be better than their record indicates, but they never are. So they're the team that's just totally in the muck for me. And I think they could completely reset quarterback next year if they wanted to. Yep. All right, let's keep moving. And next on our list is a guy that I feel very good about this year, is Ricky Pearsall. I think he's a popular sleeper-ish candidate, I guess, at this point. I've seen him kind of like rising up everybody's boards on redraft and whatnot, but
I have already made a trade offer and been rejected for him.
Oh boy. Trade offers on the podcast, Sean. What was the offer? You gonna give up the juice?
Let's see.
I'm curious because like he's a guy that's kind of tough to rank.
Let's see.
You don't have to if you don't want to. I just think it would
Oh,
be
I
fun.
don't care.
I'm just interested because, obviously he was I think he was a high second in I think it was a 2-1 or 2-2 or something. Like, I don't think his value's gone down at all. So I think he's worth a first, especially with Ayuk going down. But he's also 25 already. Like, he's kind of an interesting guy just to rank.
I offered Tyreek Hill in a fourth for Pearsall in a third.
Okay, yeah. Like, I view like Hill as like a high second at this point. I think that seems logical to me. Like him and frankly Devontae Adams are kind of in that same ballpark, like that early second type of vibe going on. But I also think Pearsall, like his value hasn't gone down to me, and he was drafted at 2-1. So that's kind of like that's where I get stuck on that one a little bit. But I just think he's a great athlete. He's playing in a great offense with a good quarterback, if not a great quarterback for this system. He's young still at 24, even though it's a little bit older for a rookie. He's still kind of in his prime-ish era. And he was a first-round draft capital. And he looked good when he played. And he got shot last year. So, like, this guy,
Yep, there's that.
Like, I think his value is going to only go up this year. My biggest question is, like, what does it look like, from a, like, because I like Juwan Jennings. Like, I don't think he's a guy just to throw away either. But
Yeah,
like
very specific guys on this offense. Juwan, very much like he's not going to do anything downfield, but like
no, he's like a big slot guy. Like he's always catching third down passes. I think he had the highest third down conversion rate last year. Like he looked great in specific instances last year. But then like Pearsall does very different things where he's really good on the in cuts, really good at going get the ball down the field.
He's a great Z.
Absolutely.
That's realized he's really good against man coverage, which is going to be where he thrives in those weeks.
I think he's literally just going to play the Ayuk role, which is exactly what that was. Ayuk was incredible against man. So like the problem I guess I have with this backfield or this receiving room is just like whenever Ayuk does come back, like the roles kind of overlap a little, but like to me, you get all three guys these on the field like somehow. I'm sure Shanahan will figure it out, but
yeah,
I'm just worried like about the overall dispersion of the targets, I guess, because you still have Kittle too. So like there's a lot of stuff to figure out, and they do like this is a classic. The 49ers like every week to week, you just kind of didn't know who was going to be that blow up guy every week. And that's kind of just been the story of the 49ers outside of the running back position is like which receiver is going to get that big week. So like that's the only downside I see here. But next year, Pearsall's wheels up in my opinion.
Yep. Agreed.
Like him. And his value is at a first round value at this point at 5,100. So he's gone up quite a bit since last year. I guess we talked about Juwan Jennings, so I guess we maybe can slide by a little bit, but his value has been incredible because I think I cut him at some point a couple years ago. And
waiver ad, great waiver ad,
outstanding waiver ad. I mean, I like when I saw him play in college at Tennessee, like I thought he wasn't fast enough to be like a whole lot in the NFL, but I thought he could be like a decent third down guy. But he just looks good. Like every time I see him play now, like something changed with him. He got skinnier. He looks faster. So like I think he's a legitimate NFL talent. Like at this point, like compared to where he was a couple of years ago, I'm very impressed. Chris Godwin's next on the list here. Got a big payday this offseason, dealing with that big injury. But this is a guy that the Buccaneers absolutely love. He looked amazing before the injury. He was on a ridiculous pace before he got hurt.
Was the wide receiver one, was he not?
I think he was, Sean. He had a zillion targets. I know that. He was the guy in that Cohen offense that was just like, if nothing else is there, we know that Chris is open. Like, and that's usually where the ball ended up because Baker does like to check it down a lot more than people think. He does like not check it down, but he likes to work the middle quite a bit. He was
leading the league in yak, which not something you think about with Chris Godwin.
No,
right off the top of your head.
I think it was just the fact that the Cohen system was so impressive in terms of getting space for guys that like, if they, with all these jet motions and all that stuff, they just found ways to get him open. So really impressive, honestly. And once again, like he was used a ton on screen plays. Like he's just overall just a great receiver. My only question is the injury at this point, which I think everybody's really wondering about is like, is he going to actually be, at full strength in week 1. It seems like Jason Light on the podcast on Pewter Report the other day seemed to think that they were still shooting for week 1 and that he was confident in that. So if that's the case,
just doesn't feel like they have to rush him. If they
no, especially not with the moves. The receivers they brought in is a big deal for him. But like I wouldn't worry about the other receivers like McMillan and Nick Buka like taking his targets or anything. Like they paid him $80 million. Like they're not gonna overlap at all. So I think this over time will be a good player for 2025, and there's a real potential that his offensive coordinator now is also the guy that was third down coordinator last year who used Chris Godwin a zillion times. So like I don't think his target share will drop or anything like that. It's just a matter of how healthy he is. And, having Godwin, Harrison, Chase as your kind of locked in top 3 if all are healthy, like that feels awesome for the Bombers. So
be an interesting offense when Evans isn't there anymore, I got to say.
It certainly will, because he just is so different. Like,
there's just nobody like that outside role. Like they're all like 50-50 slot Z kind of flanker players. So it's really interesting what will happen.
I just don't think that guy is on the roster now. Like, and eventually they could just get a taller, more boundary type receiver, but then they also could just kind of be like, we don't care, and we're just gonna do like kind of a Packers-y thing and just have a bunch of smaller guys and just run with that idea. But it'll be interesting to see. But I just don't want to think about a world without Mike Evans on the team right now, so I'm just gonna ride it out while I can. He's just been so good, and even like Baker says, like I was watching a Mic'd Up the other day, and Baker just was talking about Evans, just like, I don't even know what I'm doing with the ball, but I know if I throw it to Mike, it's gonna be a catch. Like it's just how it is. Like he just finds a way to make it happen every time. So he's just awesome. Jaden Reed, next guy on the list, 4,500 value. His value was booming last year at the beginning of the season. Got way up there in terms of rankings, set at 6,800, which is crazy value now. Lost 2,000 of that value over the course of the season on KTC, but he's just a explosive player. Really was great on those screen games, open field plays, get the ball in his hand, just like make shit happen kind of guy. And I just like the player. I just kind of have some concerns now with the fact that I don't think he's not a number 1, which is hard because like he does have number 1 weeks and he has flashes of number 1, but like from a consistency standpoint and like his role, I'm not so sure that he's ever going to kind of get to that next consistent level.
I just don't know how much of that I put on him.
No, I don't think it's him either, really, frankly.
They just don't put him out on the field.
I think it's almost like they want to keep him fresh or something, where it's like, hey, we got these design plays for you, and we don't want you to just be out there running decoy routes or doing other shit. Like maybe they just want to keep him fresh or something. I'm not really sure, to be honest, but I think that Golden coming in, he's going to be just more that traditional outside receiver that can, come over the middle, play on the out routes, and stretch the field if they need to, obviously with his 4.2 speed. So like, I'm not worried about that role overlapping with Reed, frankly. It's more just like how much, and we were just talking about, this is a team that like has other assets like Dobbs, Wicks, Kraft, Jacobs. Like, I just don't know how much of that role is going to be a consistent role where it's like, okay, like every week I can count on this guy for this. Whereas like, to me, he might be more in that like Zay Flowers-y kind of vibe for fantasy, where it's like, oh, this could be a Mark Andrews week, or this could be this, or this could be like just an 80-yard week, or maybe a 2, maybe he gets blanked. Like he's just not a guy that like I would feel great every single week putting in the lineup, if that makes sense.
I just don't know if I still don't think there's a one target dominating guy on this team as like somebody that, because even with Golden, like for me, he does not, he doesn't come across as a guy that's going to ever be a high target earner in the NFL.
No, and Golden kind of reminds me a little bit of Zay Flowers as well. A lot of similarities. Route running is great.
Zay Flowers will win quick, and he's good in the screen game. Golden, for me, is more like he'll win with his technique off of press and off the line, and it'll take him a second, but he's going to be there. But he doesn't win quickly like slants, these quick opening routes. He just doesn't.
They're developing
hasn't
routes.
showed it on tape. And in fairness, Quinn Ewers was his quarterback, so it's tough to tell from last year's tape if what that was. But for me, like on an offense that really likes to put the ball downfield, Jayden Reed's the one guy where like he's getting stuff and going after the catch. And I just think that could equal him maybe leading the team in targets still this year, which would be crazy because I don't think he's ever gotten to 100 targets yet in his first 2 years.
No, frankly, I can't remember.
Honestly, I don't think he's gotten to 80 targets yet in his
career. I'm gonna pull it up real quick because I'm curious now. But like to me, Matt Golden is kind of like his ultimate ceiling for me as like a player would be like Stephon Diggsy kind of player, where it's the size wise, he's not a huge guy, but he's really fast, really athletic, but also is just awesome over the middle portion of the field and just runs great routes. Like that's what I could see him being if everything works out. But that still leaves, like you said, like that role for a bigger boundary receiver, and then of course like a slot guy like Jayden Reed to really get a significant amount of touches. Now here's his target share. He had 94 his rookie year, which I'm shocked by. But he had only 64 were catches, so not super efficient. And then last year he had 55 catches on 75 targets. But just like once again, like looking at the game log, Reed was kind of hit or miss for the most part of the year. I mean, there was some really great weeks early on, 30 points, 21 points, and then some 4s, some 1s, 12, 0.
It just comes down to like, do you believe that's him as like a second-year player with a relatively young quarterback, like, or do you think that's just what it is? Like that's going to be his career. Like I would tend to think I would work more on the fact that like a third-year breakout was coming more than I think that's who he is.
Yeah,
and I would still like for me in the passing game, I think he should still be the guy on this team. But
and
he's not that far ahead of Golden and Kraft for me. The other guys are role players, but I think those three in the passing game are like what I would want to do if I was running the offense.
Yeah, like just to wrap it up on Reed, like I think the piece that kind of I overlook even when I look back at his stats is that he's a touchdown guy. Like he's explosive. Yep. Like he just finds a way to get in the end zone. And every time I watched his highlights too, it wasn't just like a manufactured touch near the 4-yard line or something like that. He's scoring from like 20 out, 15 yards out, 30 yards out, stuff like that.
Ground.
And that just, he had 3 rushing touchdowns over the course of his career. So like there's something special in your first 2 years if you can do that with such limited touches that means something to me. In terms of like what is your upside? Like I don't think we've seen the upside at all. I don't think we've seen the ceiling. So if they give him the shot, like you said, in that third year breakout, like this could be a huge player to have. Like if he ends up being, like his 4,500 value right now seems to me even a little low, where he could easily be a 6,000 level player on KTC if he has these giant weeks at a consistency type level where it's like, okay, now I can just comfortably throw him in as my wide receiver 2 or something like that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, just gotta raise those floor weeks.
Yeah, the floor. The problem is the zeros are just brutal. Like those just kill. Like he had a week with 0 a year. A week with 0.6. Some tough weeks out there. All right, so next up on the list for KTC is Jack Besh, who's been getting smoked recently in the media, just because he's literally not starting technically in their opening sets over Dante Thornton.
I don't care until we get to preseason about any of that.
I mean, it's just fun to talk about at this point. But he's like I said the other day on the podcast. The only problem I have with his like type of receiver is like to me he's like kind of like a big slot, kind of like what Bowers does. Like he's kind of in that same kind of role, and like I'm not so sure with I think Jacoby Myers is a fine outside boundary receiver that can do that no problem. I thought they really needed that other boundary receiver this year, and I think Besh can do it. But I also worry about his speed on the outside, where it's like I don't know if he's going to be like the guy to do that field stretching kind of role.
Right.
And
He's not going to create any explosives on the outside for you.
right. So like to me, like if you're talking about a sacrificial X, which is kind of what this is going to start feeling like, honestly, on this Raiders team, because of Myers, because of Bowers, because of even Trey Tucker could be more explosive. Like I just think that if they truly want just a guy that's going to just take the top off of a defense that has the size for the X and all that, like Dante Thornton kind of does that okay. Like he's, I mean, at least the guy that has all the height, weight, speed. So like maybe they just want to give him the first crack at it to just say like, hey, like we know you got the tools. Let's just see if this works early in the preseason or something. And if it sucks and he can't do it, then you have other options like Tucker and Besh to see what you got. But it doesn't feel good, I think, is the problem.
Yeah,
when your second round receiver is not on the field.
The cool part of this offense is also probably the thing that's gonna make it really difficult for him to produce in year one, where you've got all of these guys, Myers and Bowers, who really all kind of eat in the same area of the field. So it'll be curious to see how they're deployed. I don't know. I got no clue. New OC who hasn't been in the NFL in a while, who's got a completely different scheme than the previous. So
yeah, I mean that's the biggest question, because I went back and watched a lot of Bowers on the All 22 and the way they used him and Michael Mayer, and it was just evident that like Bowers he was so good in the receiving game and just on the move. He just was not playing tight end, like flat out was not playing tight end. Mayer was doing all the tight end stuff. So I don't know with all these guys that you just mentioned, including Genty. There's just I want to see what it looks like, but I also think that's kind of what the Raiders are doing, because I don't think they even know what this offense truly is going to look like at this point. Like they need to see what their guys look like in training camp, probably more than anything, like with pads on, to kind of figure out what this is going to look like. But so like obviously not writing off Besh at all, and like no question at all, but like it doesn't feel super great at this point with what we know.
I know that on a Pete Carroll team, the best guy is going to play. Like, I don't think they're going to feel one way or another about having to stick to convictions about like draft capital or how much money somebody's making. So I feel good about that. So like, the cream's going to rise, but
he's just not explosive enough, I feel like.
Yeah, he's never going to have he's definitely not a very sexy, like best ball kind of guy.
No, I think like he could be just like a great chain mover guy, just an outstanding train mover. But like for fantasy, I don't know how.
Juwan Jennings.
I was gonna say it, but he's much smaller, like in terms of overall size. But he's just an interesting and unique player that I like the player. I'm just concerned about like where it fits year one specifically. So I don't think Justin should be like banking on this to be a usable asset out the gate. Like I think he's going to kind of find a way to be on the bench most weeks, if not all of them. Juwan Jennings we talked about. Marquise Brown, that's an interesting name, blast from the past name. I don't know what the hell the Chiefs are going to look like on offense, frankly, outside of maybe those top two guys, but they're just weird.
I hope it's interesting for how often we have to watch them. That's all I hope for.
It's going to be a lot. Yeah, I hope they don't suck.
They've been so fucking boring the last 2 years.
I know. I just feel like between the injuries and people being whatever, like older now, especially Kelsey, no Tyreek anymore. Like it's just not been the same Chiefs to watch every week. It's just like I miss the crazy downfield plays. Like I just hate the Chiefs at this point. So like I need some reason to care, and this would be like this offense with to me if they were going to run four receivers, run Kelsey out there, put Rasheed in the other side of the slot, and then your outside receivers are Hollywood and Xavier Worthy stretching the field, like that would be so sick if that all hits. And it would be a real problem to stop. So like I think
they just can't stay on the field.
That's the problem, is none of these guys can stay on the field. So I just like at this point, the only guy that can is Kelsey, and he's slow as shit at this point. So I'm not sure.
Hey, he lost 30 pounds.
They keep
Watch
telling
out.
me. They keep telling me. I think it's because he gained 30 pounds last year. I think he's just back to whatever he was.
I think so too.
So I don't know. It's that's gonna be an interesting offense, but like for fantasy,
Definitely,
he's gonna be kind of like a maybe a best ball kind of guy.
yeah, definitely one of those guys I was talking about earlier about like where his value was pretty good and then like it's just trailed off
Yeah.
since then.
Yeah, I just don't feel great about having him on really any of my rosters at this point, but he could be usable. Next on the list, we have Troy Franklin, Denver receiver. And he's a guy that's kind of just been fizzling as well in recent, since the draft, basically, even since last draft. Kind of got beat out by Devon Vele last year earlier on in the camp process. So that didn't feel great. Marvin Mims kind of looked better at the end of the year. They already have Cortland Sutton. I'm just not really
I mean, he's
feeling it.
potential cut candidate to me.
Interesting. Like I wasn't feeling it last year on Franklin. He was never my guy, but like he's not dead at all. I mean, he's just not the kind of receiver, especially like I watched so much Broncos the other day with Estime. The amount of times that Lil Jordan Humphrey was on the field was startling. And I think with these outside guys, he just likes to have these big boundary guys because of their blocking ability, specifically because when they do these kind of like jet sweepy plays and wide zones and all this stuff, they like to have those downfield blockers. And like that's just not going to be Troy Franklin. He's just way too skinny for that. So I'm wondering where he actually fits. And I think his role is kind of like a downfield kind of Marvin Mims role, honestly, frankly. So like I don't know how that shakes out. And from a dynasty value standpoint, I'm not counting on him at all this year. So I think you're just gonna have to kind of just, like you said, he could be a cut candidate, I guess. Next on the list, Jalen Lane, Virginia Tech wide receiver, drafted in the 4th round, pick 26 for the Washington Commanders. A bit of an older prospect, late breakout as well. I'm not really sure how I feel about Jalen Lane at this point.
I gotta say he's not a guy that I knew a whole lot going into the draft, so it would be disingenuous for me to tell you.
I mean, the only thing I really know about him, and just from, I think I watched 4 of his games last year, which that's usually not enough for me to get a good vibe on somebody. Usually I need like 6 probably to feel good about saying something, but he was an explosive player. I will say that. Really good when he got the ball in his hands. The problem was getting it into his hands. I think he dropped a lot of balls and wasn't a polished route runner. He was kind of like a Jaden Reed that doesn't know how to run a route kind of a thing. So like I think he could be good, and I think if there's a team that he can land on that has the guys ahead of him, like a Debo and a Terry McLaurin that can kind of like teach him what to do, like he could be a pretty good asset for this team. I think their view of him is probably going to be like, oh, this is the Diami Brown replacement, like where he stretches the field and can kind of make plays on the boundary just outside. But he's going to be at the best a role player to start. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about him here, but he could break out. He's a guy that could really blow up in preseason, I think, if he has a couple of explosive plays like he showed in college.
Yep.
And then maybe his value goes up. But next on the list, Calvin Austin, technically wide receiver 2 right now for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Like kind of ugly, but yeah, he's there.
Yeah.
Certainly is a receiver.
He definitely fits the mold of like an Aaron Rodgers kind of guy, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like if he's in the Randall Cobb type vibe, right? Like he's kind of that funky little slot receiver. The problem is like I just don't know. He hasn't done anything at all at any point in his career that would like give you any sort of hope from an upside standpoint. He kind of just seems he is what he is kind of guy maybe, but Aaron Rodgers always falls in love with like these guys every year. Maybe it's him, who knows? But he's a guy that I would roster at this point just because he's the wide receiver too.
Yeah, opportunity.
Like, I mean, I would roster him over Troy Franklin for sure, even though he has less value technically. Dante Thornton, I guess we talked about quite a bit as well. So you can probably pass on that. But that's a guy that I will absolutely not cut before the preseason's over, especially now that he's kind of been running with the starters. So not messing with that right now. Devon Vele, talked about him as well a little bit. I I'm not really sure what's going to happen with him.
I mean, I think he just got buried by Pat Bryant.
Pat Bryant, that's kind of the guy we didn't really mention in that offense. And I like Pat Bryant, and I think he does a lot of the same thing. We're just talking about big guys that can block on the outside. Like that is literally Pat Bryant. So I think Pat Bryant takes the Lil Jordan Humphrey role, and that's just like his spot for the year. And then Vele is kind of like that mix and match outside boundary guy. And then Mims is like your, explosive guy. And Sutton, obviously Sutton's not going anywhere. So like he's an outside boundary guy as well. So it's going to be just like a crowded room that I don't know, like fantasy wise, other than Sutton, I don't really want any of these guys, I'll be honest. So
yeah, I don't think any of them are really startable.
Deontay Johnson,
Cleveland, right?
Is he going to start for Cleveland?
I think it's going to be Judy
Tillman.
And Tillman.
And then just probably put Johnson as the third guy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think he got like $10,000 guaranteed in his contract. So
he's going to get cut, is what you're saying.
I mean, good. He's talented. He's obviously
very cuttable, though. The thing is, he had good years last year. He had that stretch of good years or good weeks, and I was like, what the hell? And then now he just literally, he went from
leaves
very solid
turns into
to 1,500 KTC value. Like he just died basically. So
another guy on this roster just
kind of fell off the cliff a little bit here. This is a legacy player for the Bombers, a legacy player. Gabe Davis, another legacy player. Another legacy player.
I most definitely made a significant offer for Gabe Davis that offseason where he was getting hyped.
I did make a significant offer, and it was rejected. I remember offering him something for Gabe Davis. It was a lot too. It was after that playoff game, right?
Yep. That 4 touchdown, 200-yard playoff game or whatever it was.
What could have been Gabe Davis? He's not on a team, I don't believe.
He's been around. He could be on the Steelers. I also heard he could be on the Giants potentially because of the Dayball connection.
Yeah, that adds up. It looks like he's not on a team as it stands. But man, the Jaguars couldn't wait to cut him. Like it was just unbelievable. Like they didn't even mention him. Like I remember there's like some pre-draft content that came out where Gladstone was talking about the receiving room, and he's like, "Yeah, we really like Brian Thomas, and then we really like Parker Washington," and like just absolutely no mention of.
What's funny is how much money they had to eat, considering how little it was talked about.
Does any team like overpaying receivers more than the Jags? They love it. Even Gladstone overpaid the shit out of De'Ami Brown. Like it's just they just can't help themselves. Every year it's just the same shit. They just find a guy to massively overpay and they never do anything. Very interesting. So anywho, let's go back to the receivers. We got a couple lower end guys here. I don't want to spend too much time on either of the bottom two guys. Lambert Smith has some role potential, I guess. He's apparently looked good.
Yeah, I would keep him. I would like to see what happens with him.
Yeah, he's a preseason guy.
Uphill battle because you got Ladd, who's the guy, and then Trey Harris, who could be a guy.
Yeah.
And Mike Williams, who's an injured guy.
He's an injured guy that will likely play 4 games as a starter and not do that anymore. So there's room for him to find a spot, though.
Harbaugh guy, he always seems to get guys in these middle rounds to late rounds that, just look at like Cam Hart was like last year. Like he was a 5th round pick and he was real good.
Yeah, Cam Hart was very good. And I liked Lambert Smith as a prospect probably a little bit more than other people did. Like he has legitimate route running ability. The problem is he's kind of like in that slender, outside receiver type, but he's not explosive. Yep. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how he ends up, but he's a preseason guy to me to watch. All right, moving into tight ends. This room has been another just like legacy draft and hold room for the most part. TJ Hawkinson at 4,800 value. Hawkinson, obviously guy had the injury last year, but definitely looked good when he played. Didn't look any different than he always looked to me. I feel pretty good about him this year. I feel fine as long as he's healthy.
I think he's a solid back end tight end 1 for me this year. Like
I kind of like the fact that
tight end 7, 6 in that range.
Yeah, right now he's ranked 7 here, and this is dynasty value, but even a redraft, I think it's kind of in the same spot. And he's kind of just like one of those guys, like you just kind of know what you're going to get when he's on the field, and maybe doesn't have quite the upside as like a Tucker Kraft or maybe some of these other guys in the similar range, but the thing I like the most, I think, from an upside standpoint this year is the fact that he does have McCarthy throwing the ball, a rookie, who tend to like to throw to tight ends when nothing else is there. They're kind of like a safety blanket kind of guy. And
Oh, interesting. Okay. I took that a different direction. I thought that maybe it was going to be more like skew more run heavier than they have in previous years. So I didn't think the opportunity was going to be there compared to the last couple of years.
that's a fair point. Like if they don't sling it around, kind of like they did last year, especially like pushing the
And
ball
like
downfield.
you're not going to take those opportunities away from Jefferson and frankly probably not Addison either.
No, they're both good receivers. Like it's not like they have to worry about the receiving game. It's just like I'm wondering more about like what the play design will look like because we have a long track record of Stefanski or not Stefanski, Kevin O'Connell, where he just adapts to whatever quarterback's in the game. So like whether it be Josh Dobbs or whoever it was back in the day, he's a guy that just makes it happen. So like if they know that maybe McCarthy's tendency is to be a bit of a gunslinger and take too many risks, they might just kind of rein it in and say, hey, let's get some more manufactured and more simple targets to underfield targets and then pop them every once in a while with the receivers. So like there's definitely a chance that that a TJ Hawkins could be more of a feature than he was in previous years maybe. So I'm just kind of interested to see how that offense looks in general because I just think McCarthy has the upside. It's just like a matter of how they use them. But for Dynasty, he's still only 28, which is a guy I feel like has been in the league forever, and he looks like he's been in the league forever. He looks like a caveman, but he's part of the 2019 class. This is his 6th year already, so it's just crazy, or 7th year, I should say. So I like the players, and I think he's fine. Just not a ton of upside though. That's the only real difference. And a player that we've talked about upside for how many years, Sean? 5 now.
It feels like 10, and somehow he's still only 24.
Still only 24. He's drafted as 20. And the perpetual, like, I'm ready to be hurt again. Like, it's just in redraft, if you draft him, you got to just know at this point.
I mean, I don't know. Like, they're literally wrapping him in, like, bubble wrap to try and trade him.
I don't know, man.
They're not going to get a round 2 or 3.
There's no fucking way I'm paying a round 2
chance that's happening.
No.
I don't.
And I think the conclusion I've kind of come to, we've seen 4 years of Kyle Pitts at this point, is I don't think he's a dog. I don't think he's a dog. I think he doesn't care. I think he got his number 4 draft pick, a lot of money, and he had that good opening year. But like, I think he's lazy when the play is not near him. I think he doesn't run as good routes as he should be for his size and speed. There's just something missing at Kyle Pitts in general. He's too athletic. He's too talented to suck this bad. So what's the issue? And the only thing I can come back to is it's got to be something like mental or off the field where it's just something's not clicking, and maybe a change of scenery is what he actually needs, but I don't think it is. Like, I think this just might be who he is at this point. And it would, like you said, it would be ill-advised for a team to trade a high draft pick or premium capital at all for a guy like this when he's proven outside of that first year nothing, and there's no real reason for him or for a team to just believe that he's going to get back to that 1,000-yard receiver immediately.
A trade that would make sense for me is like you're getting Pitts and like a 6th round pick for like a 4th.
Yeah,
one of those kind of deals where like you're still getting an asset back on top of Pitts, but like that's about it. I just think it's crazy to think that they're going to get anything better than that.
I thought I had this like this kind of galaxy brain thought the other day, like why there's a team that's been kind of hunting a tight end recently in the league, a specific tight end on the Dolphins. The Pittsburgh Steelers would be an interesting trade candidate for Kyle Pitts.
They called about him.
I think it would be interesting because like he's a guy that like you could use as a receiver essentially.
Yeah, he played for Arthur Smith.
And maybe that's the reason they don't want him. I don't know, but
they did.
I mean, if they called him, he likes something he sees. A guy that they already know at least a little bit probably wouldn't.
That's less passing work for Darnell Washington, Eric.
Which is disgusting.
Think about what you're saying here.
Aaron Rodgers called him the next Mercedes Lewis.
I mean, yeah,
he's got the size and speed for it. So it means something, I guess. I don't know. he could just have like a 15-year NFL career as a blocker, but I don't know. Like I don't think this is not working on the Falcons. It's not going to work on the Falcons. So
Nope.
unless he comes out this year just like rejuvenated somehow, where it's the mental thing is clicked or whatever, I just don't see it happening this year.
He is guaranteed to score 5 touchdowns this year based off of his career track because he had 1 his rookie year.
1, 2, 3, 4.
2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Okay, so 5 is hey, we're talking about tight end 12 range here. So,
Yeah.
Which I think his redraft value is right around like 10 to 12 ish at this point.
Wow.
And I just can't do it. I just can't do it because like he lets you down every year. So, and we know he has the upside. Like, and is Kyle Pitts the mascot of the Bombers in a way where it's like we know they got the juice and it's just like it just doesn't happen?
I'm ready to be hurt again, Bombers.
That's kind of where we're at. Like maybe we should make a Kyle Pitts Bombers jersey. Like there's something. It's just I hate to say it, but it's just like these guys. Like a Kyle Pitts was a guy that I loved, and I tried to trade for many times a couple of years ago, and I still think he's got to be one of the most interesting players in the history of the position because of his size and speed and what he did that first year. Like it's not like it'd be one thing if we never saw anything of Kyle Pitts, but that first year with 1,000 yards was like, yo, like rookie tight ends don't do this. This is like, This is special. And then for that to just literally disappear with decent quarterback play, I just don't get it. I really don't get it. Like, I mean, obviously not last year with Ritter or the year before with Ritter, but like they had guys that could function. I don't know. Kyle Pitts, man, just he's literally a story every year at this point, and it's just interesting. So, anywho, more interesting player, Terrence Ferguson here. Terrence is the new Turd Ferguson, if you will, the young Turd Ferguson, maybe Turd
Terrence
Junior.
Phillips Ferguson.
Can we say Turd Junior? Little Turd. There's so many opportunities here, but a high draft pick, way higher than I thought he was going to get drafted. I thought he was a 3rd round guy personally. So to go with, top half of the second was very high. Felt like, I'll be honest with you, it felt like they really, really wanted Mason Taylor based on all the stuff I watched from behind the scenes with the draft with the Rams. Seemed like they were gunning for Mason Taylor, just could not happen. And this was kind of like the fallback option, which I don't think is, an indictment on Ferguson. He's just not as explosive. Like he's very solid, but doesn't do anything really that great. But I think like those guys mean something in the NFL, especially at 6'5", 250. Like this is a guy that really could be a solid NFL starter. I kind of view, like, I hate to compare him to this, but like he's like if you merge Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave together and like fuse them into one player, like that's kind of what we get here with the receiving game specifically, because they both do like very similar things. All 3 of them do similar things, I should say. But I think for year 1, he's gonna be behind Higbee. Like this team likes Higbee too much.
It's gonna be a year before we are talking about like him again. This will be the last time we talk about him for.
I think he'll have like these random weeks where he'll have like maybe like a touchdown and 50, 60 yards or something. But like, I just don't think there's going to be enough, like, especially with Devontae there, they paid other guys. They have other receivers at this point. Like he's just not going to be a feature of this offense this year. It honestly kind of segues into Ben Sinnott a little bit, where he's a wait and see kind of guy too at this point after year 1 in a similar situation.
Sure.
I know Sean's out.
You can cut him. It's fine.
I still just think that's too crazy to me. Like, why not try to trade him?
What?
Like, I mean, if you're gonna cut him, like, you can get something for Ben Sinnott. You can get something. You can at least swap players for like somebody that maybe you believe in more. Like, I don't think you just cut guys like this.
Cut guys like what? He didn't do anything last year.
I'm not. He's a tight end. They never do anything year 1. They're not all Brock Bauer.
Kyle Pitts.
I'm not saying like listen. All I'm saying is that he has value, and I don't think you should just cut people that have value at some capacity.
Over half of his yards came off a trick play in special teams.
Okay. We're not going to get anywhere here, so I'll just leave it at that. I just think he's more talented than it's giving off. He's 23. He was a high draft pick. He was drafted basically 6 picks after Terrence Ferguson was this last year. Like, it's not like they're just going to throw him away. Like, I just don't see that. Like, there's upside still. But like, of course, you didn't see it year one, but that doesn't mean he can't do it.
I'm out.
All right, fair enough. Hey, just don't send any offers to Sean Benson. save your energy. I mean, I'm talking about like I want to trade for him, but I mean I'm not like I'm not saying you should be jonesing to trade for Ben Simmons. I'm just saying that like I think that you could find other cut guys before you could cut Ben Simmons. Probably that's all I'm saying. Like if it came down to it, sure you can cut him, I guess. But like I would try. He'd be a guy I'd try to get like a 4th for before I cut him. Like that's all. Let's see who else is left, and then we also have Noah Gray, who's just a guy that's been around on a bunch of different teams, and
also cuttable.
He's a guy that every year he's like, oh, he's gonna be the next Kelsey, and it just doesn't happen. So, I mean, I had him on my team for a little while because I just thought like, oh, if there's any chance he's used in a Kelsey role, I'll take him. But like, it's turned out that Rashee Rice is just doing that, so I don't think there's anything to worry about there. And then from a draft picks perspective, he basically has all of his picks at this point. He's got
plus a third.
He did pick up a third for next year, but for the most part, he's in top half of the league shape in terms of draft picks, and he's like we talked about earlier. He's not really like super keen to trading them unless it makes a ton of sense for his roster. I am kind of wondering what he thinks about his running back room again. Does he think he maybe needs to supplement it a little bit more with a draft pick trade for a guy at this stage of the offseason? Or if he's, content with going into the year with what he's got. Because I really think that, like, once again, as we talked about last offseason, really the only major weak spot of this team is still the running back position, even after last year. And like this, we talk about all the time how running backs are so important in this league. Without the Joe Mixon, great year last year, there was really nothing here when Kenny Walker went down for the most part that was super exciting to have. So Etienne obviously was a huge disappointment. So I'm wondering if there's something out there that, if Justin feels like the rest of his team is ready to rock, which I think it is. Maybe it's another time to trade a draft pick at this point. But once again, who's trading the running backs away at this point in the offseason? I don't feel like it's not likely unless there is kind of a trade like that happened last year, essentially. So, Sean, how do we feel about the Bombers in the grand scheme of things? I'll pull up the power rankings here for players only. The Bombers are ranked 4 currently on Keep Trade Cut in terms of their value. I feel good about the team as far as like making the playoffs. The concern is the running backs again. Like this is a league that absolutely you got to have the running backs to win. I don't think week to week that his running backs are going to be a positional advantage at any real point with the contenders, at least. That being said, the Burrow Chase connection offers, a massive. You can win any week with those guys. Yep. So if his team makes the playoffs and gets hot, with those two guys specifically, that could really, elevate this team to being a true contender. But where do you stand?
I mean, I think it's going to be like get into the playoffs kind of team, and then it just kind of depends from there. Like, do you ride hot with the Burrow Chase? I think the way the league looks right now, I just don't know who would trade a running back. So like, I think he's just kind of got what he's got, and he's rolling from there. And I think that's like a 5th or 6th seed to me.
Yeah, like the more I kind of look at the way the league is kind of like the landscape of it right now, is he's kind of maybe being that 4, 5, 6 slotting, and it's going to be a bit of a dogfight for those spots with the Battle Axes, the Lionheads, the Armadillos, some of those teams, even the Elk, for example, this year. I think they can kind of make a way in. So I think it's pretty clear. We all feel strongly about the cheese fries up at the top, but basically 2 through 6 is kind of up for grabs this year. I mean, I think your team is definitely still in the mix as well, and could easily get one of those spots near the top as well if everything kind of rolls the right way. But not to mention the Lionheads are kind of also in this bucket too with the receiving group. They're kind of the inverse a little bit of the Bombers, with having the good running backs, but then the receivers are a little bit weaker. So they're every team outside of really like maybe 2 or 3 teams has some sort of kind of gap in the team. So this is one of those that kind of falls into that bucket as well. I just think that like we just talked about that stack and some of these upside receivers, specifically like the Marvin Harrison, can he take the jump? Jayden Reed, does he hit the upside? Chris Godwin, is he healthy? Like if those questions all happen to be answered in a positive way, like that receiving room could absolutely carry the shit out of this team, and really be a top 3 team for sure if those guys all hit their ceilings. I'm just not sure that's going to happen, but I believe again. I'm a believer again that this could work, and here we are. So we're back. I will say this year feels less believey, if that's a word. And it's
when they get you.
And that's maybe like now the expectations are lower. So, and then he wins a couple games early in the year. He starts 3-0, and then I'm going to be back on the wagon again. And then I don't know. It's a vicious cycle. But it's Justin, I'm impressed with what he's done in the draft in recent years for sure. And I think that's something to be said too. Like with a team that doesn't make as many deals, to kind of stay in the mix for as long as he has, and has such a solid roster overall. Really impressive. Basically, just the longevity of just quality, not rebuilding football essentially without really having to do a whole lot. So he's a calculated guy when it comes to the trading for sure. So, okay. So that's going to wrap up the Bombers team review. Next week, I cannot remember off the top of my head.
It's the Lambs.
That is correct. And we will have a special guest on that one to review the Lambs, so that'll be fun. And then we're going to follow that one up on July 4th week with the Lionheads and then the Cheese Fries. We got quite a few. We're going to try to get all these on Tuesdays at the same time roughly every week. So make sure to tune in on your Tuesdays or wherever you're watching the podcast after the fact. And if you have any questions, any ideas, anything you want to talk about on the podcast, always let us know, and we'll try our very best. And we will see you next time for